Hey everyone, we're back. It's summer season at Forever Mighty Podcast. It's our I always called it like postseason show, so I guess we'll just stick with that. But I like summer season hockey better. I haven't decided what I wanted. It's just
It's
another
interview season. That's what it
interview.
is.
Oh, there you go. It is interview
They,
Yeah.
season.
they could technically be preseason too.
We're that. They're at that point. We're at that
That's what
point.
we're looking at.
There's no off season, just hockey
No.
season and preseason.
Not for us. There's never an off season. We got to put out content every couple of weeks or every week if we have a lot going on. As Eddie just said, we have interview season as we have a bunch of those that have come out over the last summer. So we appreciate everyone who's come on. Jay, it's good to see you. It's good to see you back in the program.
Yeah, been a little while. Crazy. That's what air conditioning does in the summer in Southern California. Makes you less available.
Oh, when it's 100 degrees for 2 weeks or 3 weeks straight,
Yeah.
I guess you're not busy at all.
No social life.
So today, boys, we have quite a bit of news to cover. I mean, the NHL put out an article about the Ducks. We'll hop into that. We have an interview on this show also, speaking of interview season, so that'll come towards the, you guys will hear it towards the middle of the show. It'll be Will Francis will come on the show to talk to us. It was very kind of him to take time out of his summer after being drafted. So that's one to stick around for sure. But we have a couple other things we got to get to. Scott Wheeler's article, we had him on the show about a week ago talking about prospects in the NHL. He mentioned 3 that made his top 50 and then 1 that didn't. That kind of pissed some people off. So we'll definitely get to that. But first, NHL decides to, they do this every year, right? They do 31 and 31. Or 30 and 30.
No, they definitely
It used
stole
to
it
be.
from us.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
we
Yeah,
attempted to do that last summer with puck guys, and it didn't really pan out. Turns out it's a lot of work with 3 guys with families to do these things. But they put out an article, in-depth analysis for each of its 31 teams throughout August to kind of get you through, what's the cliche, dog days of summer. Or baseball season, boring season.
Well, didn't you hear they call baseball America's pastime because it's what you have to do to pass the time
You
between hockey
have to
season.
pass the time with it. I can't get into it, man. I try every once in a while to get into it. I just can't get into it. Trout's amazing
like
to
the
watch. Show me
nuances
highlights of that
of
guy
it,
all
yeah.
day. I'm going to watch
yeah.
Trout. The guy's amazing.
It's not too bad, but yeah, it's you definitely have to have a solid amount of beer to sit and watch the whole game.
Eddie, are you a stickball fan?
Yeah. Do you have baseball thoughts now?
Every now and then, I tried to get into baseball, and I can't go watch games live. I went to go see one game, and you watch it on TV, and then you're like, it's 2 or 3 hours long, feels long, and then you go to a game and you sit there for 3 hours, and and then it's in the heat, and it feels even longer.
And then you're $110 deep in beer.
But the ticket only costs $20, so it's fine.
It costs $20 for you guys. We get
Like
bleeders,
$7 bleeders.
like $7 or $5, but then you just drop all the money in beer because you're just like, oh my god, I need to fast forward this game.
I went when the Blue Jays were good, so maybe that also.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, let's hop into this news. We got we're going to go through the 3 questions. We don't need to dissect this article all the way through because we're talking about prospects later. But let's talk about the first question here. The question that they decided to go first with is, how will the team transition under Coach Dallas Eakins? I'm always going to mess that up. It's Eakins,
yeah.
Eakins.
Eakins,
I swear I'll get
like
it. Yeah,
the-
the
like-
E is silent, Pat. Don't say it. How do you
Even
guys
though
feel
capitalized.
about that? It was more of a question that they posed. They didn't really analyze it. It just kind of talks about they're going to be very competitive, or we're going to have enough people who already understand the values of the coach and what his vision is. But to you guys, has your opinions changed since this hiring? Do you guys feel like this is heading in the right direction?
Yeah, well, anything's better than what it was last season. I feel like a lot of players are kind of getting crapped on for having a bad season last year, and I just want to see what most of those analytics were under Carlisle versus what was under Bob Murray. And even Bob Murray, who's not a head coach and just used, whatever. I mean, the style completely changed from day one on. And I feel that will probably continue under what Akins is going to do. I do it too. What Akins is going to do as far as the coach. But I think he played a much more he wants you to play hard defensively. You buy the book, you cover here, you go there, you're structured on defense. But when you go to offense, be creative. Have some idea of where everything's going to happen, but be more creative. I like that approach for this NHL, and let your offensive players just kind of be dynamic and creative. And when you have younger players, they're coming up with new things that you don't necessarily see the old school players kind of come up with. So I'm more excited that he's taken that approach, that defense is going to have an understanding of what they need to do. And so I'm more optimistic. Anything's going to be better than Carlisle, but I actually think not only is it just anything, it's what we need given the talent and the age of the players coming up.
I think they'll transition well. It all just depends on how well you think they're going to do. Like, what is your term for success this season? Is it making the playoffs? Then maybe that's not transitioning well for you. If it's just playing better than last year, playing more entertaining hockey, scoring more goals than last year, then I think they'll transition well in that way. Dallas Eakins will bring in a different system, one that probably fits better than Randy Carlisle. Honestly, anything will likely be better than what the Ducks had last year. And with the fact that a lot of the younger players coming up, and Sam Steele and maybe Jones and Comtois and Terry, they've all had experience with Dallas Eakins last year. So I think that's going to help out a little bit. So the transition will be fine. It's just how successful they're going to be. That is kind of the question that's going to be up in the air.
Well, I mean, if you look at the article states it for me perfectly in the two short paragraphs. He's comfortable within the organization. He's known management a long time, and he knows many of the young players that can make the roster. And then in quotes, it says that we have a number of players in this organization that already understand what I value, Aiken said. I know what they value. For me, it just really speeds up the process. So, I mean, he's familiar. He knows these guys. He knows what the expectation is. We like this hire, right? Because it comes from not a place where this guy's brand new, coming in, bringing in all his staff, doesn't know the management, doesn't know the players. These guys want to play for Eakins already off the bat. And this guy, he knows how to motivate young guys, and that's what this team is. So I'm really excited to see what this transition means for defense more than the offense. I mean, that defense under Carlisle was so bad. It was just so bad. They were just hemorrhaging shots all day. I mean, we saw Gibson get fatigued the past 2 seasons under Randy Carlisle. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he brings on the defensive side of things. I hope that it boosts, my boy Hampy over there in the Ducks organization, and he has a breakout year for him. So I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest with you guys.
Me too. Yeah, I think people will be a little bit more surprised as far as how well we can play, even given that we're going to have younger players in there. I think this season looks a lot better than I think a lot of people are expecting.
Well, yeah, you need to see more creativity, I think, on offense, because that's something they lacked last year. It was just boring to watch a lot of games where obviously the defense was the issue at times where they were getting blown out in the shot department, but they weren't developing or producing a lot of quality chances. There would be games where, how many times did we say they put up over 30, 35 shots, and the scoring chances they had were nothing? They might have outshot a team 35-20 in a game, but it didn't feel like it, and they got outplayed, yet they put up a ton of shots because they weren't really getting quality scoring chances. They were just shooting the puck from the outside, or the other team was limiting their chances. So that's what I want to see if that transition goes in that direction. I think it will, because it all depends on what system and the way the style that Dallas Eakins wants to play. But I think, again, like we've already said, anything is better than what Randy Carlisle had last year. And from what we saw in San Diego and from what he said so far, that we're likely going to see a little more creativity and hopefully some better scoring chances and just better hockey to watch than what we saw last year.
So that leads us right into the second question, and it says, where is the offense going to come from? Where is this scoring going to come from? The Ducks were ranked last in the NHL in goals last season with 196, averaging just 2.39 per game. They were shut out 9 times and scored fewer goals scored 2 or fewer in 45 of 82 games. Getzlaf led us with 48 points, guys. It's pretty dire looking at that lineup offensively last season. So where is all this going to come from? The Ducks haven't brought in literally anybody to help on the scoring front. They've done nothing. They're paving the way for kids. So my question to you guys is, and it's kind of, I guess, where this question on NHL.com is basically trying to make you think is, can we trust the kids with, limited experience. I mean, 81 combined NHL games from Steele, Terry, Comtois, and Lundestrom. Is that something that we can rely on going into this first season under Dallas Eakins?
Well, you don't know for sure. I mean, you can't necessarily rely on it, but you got to have a hope or a faith in it. And I think that these kids, for two reasons. One, when last season when Terry was up at the beginning of the season, there wasn't much going on, and he struggled, and it was the second time around, struggling a little bit. Went down, just blew it up under Eakins and the AHL. Came back up, completely different player. So he's there. Sam Steele showed a lot of great ability to be in there and kind of help solidify the center depth with Kessler being gone. Jones, I think, is so many inches away from having so many more goals last season. Last season was just it sucked all around. So I hate using that as they weren't all that great, or the team wasn't that great, or Silverberg. It was like Silverberg wasn't good, Raquel wasn't good, Getzlaf wasn't good, until Carlisle left. Once that happened, all of a sudden Silverberg goes way past 20 goals. Raquel starts to find his touch a little bit. And I think the Terry, the Jones, adding in Comtois is a possibility that he's going to come in, provide some of that offense. If Kase can stay healthy, he's poised to get a lot more minutes, and he's really good 5-on-5 within the entire NHL. So, I mean, that offense will be there more, in my opinion. You can't look at last season and go like, well, there's not a whole lot to be optimistic about. I look at last season and go like, that's the worst we could be, and there's no way we can be that bad again.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be that bad, because you would assume Rickard Raquel will have a rebound season, and maybe he won't hit 30, but you would hope he'd be settled around 25, between 25 and 30 if we're lucky. Jakob Silfverberg, if he can get 20 to 25, that's about the same as what he had last year, and that was considered a good year for him. Adam and Henrique, you hope, could hit 20 to 25, and in a rebound year where he had 18. And then the big one for me is Ondrej Kase in a fully healthy year. When you look at the fact, and we're going to get into this later, he was second in the league in 5-on-5 shot attempts. And the guys that were in that top 10, I think almost all of them except for one, and then obviously Kase, were 30 goal scorers last year or more. So not to say that he's going to hit 30 for sure, but he is in that company. And if he can produce at the same rate he was last year, that's a guy who could score 20 to 30 for the Ducks. So that's an increase right there. And then it comes down to what can Sam Steele and Troy Terry and Comtois, if he makes the team, and Max Jones, what can they do? And, there are only 3 guys over 15 goals this year. And I think saying that maybe Maxim Comtois or Troy Terry or Sam Steele could hit 15 goals isn't out of the question. Same for Max Jones. So if you get those guys hitting over 15 as well, that's 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 guys that could hit over 15 goals last year when you only had 3 last year. So the offense isn't going to jump into the top 10 of the league. It might not even jump into the top half of the league, but it's going to be better than last year. They're not going to be dead last. There's going to be some improvement, but to say that it's going to go from dead last to top 10, I think that's a bit of a stretch.
It's got to be a bit of a stretch, and a lot of it's going to rely on special teams. I feel like, the Ducks didn't produce there, right? And that's, the numbers state themselves. Getzlaf not producing on the power play as a goal scorer. They don't really have a trigger man because Raquel really wasn't able to find his footing last season until the end of the year. So it's all going to depend on these new systems and how they're going to be clicking here under Dallas Eakins. And we also, you guys, we can't count on all these kids making the team out the gate. I mean, I don't think the Ducks are just going to, flood their entire roster with all these young guys. It's going to be here and there, except for guys like Troy Terry. I think Terry's going to make the team right out of camp. There's no question he's an NHL caliber player. He's a middle 6 forward. I don't think he's ever going to be a top line guy. And I don't really feel like any of these guys that are coming up in the system besides Trevor Zegras, and he's a couple of years away, I don't think any of these guys are top-line guys. The Ducks have a really good middle 6 that's forming with their youngsters. They don't have that elite level coming in yet, but I still don't see them being all on the roster at once. This is going to be a good mix until the Ducks sort out what they're doing with their older players.
I mean, Sam Steele, in my opinion, he'll eventually kind of take over that number 2 spot. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, if they let Henrique and Getzlaf kind of take the top 2, which is what I think.
Henrique's a really good performer. He's not a bad player.
Yeah, but Sam still has shown that he's able to take over that number 2 spot, at least from an offensive. He does everything good. He doesn't do everything great. So like you said, not top line, but he's definitely shown himself as a good second line guy. And as far as this upcoming season, I wouldn't be surprised to see what we saw in the 2007 year, and that's have a kid line where you have Jones on one side, Terry on the other, and Sam Steele, and they're all third line guys. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me either, and then throw in a Comtois somewhere. And then even have, if Richie was actually decent when he finally got on the team and started playing, obviously still bonehead, penalties that he takes, but it felt like his offensive side was a little bit better. So it'll be interesting to see if he can contribute at that same pace or if he starts to falter and what they want to do with him.
I think the only guys you could say are locks for the younger players next year are Troy Terry and Sam Steele. And I think Sam Steele's the big one because Ryan Kessler's not going to be playing. And you've got Getzlaf and Henrique who are likely to be 1-2, and Sam Steele will be right in there as number 3. He's a lot better than Devin Shore, than Carter Rowney, even Isaac Lindstrom. Not to say Isaac Lindstrom's a bad player, but Sam Steele's more experienced and is likely above him on the depth chart to get into that spot. So I think Sam Steele's a lock. Troy Terry should be, but the right side, even with Corey Perry going, there's still a little bit of competition on that right side with Silverberg and Kasha and Kiefer Sherwood as well. But I think Troy Terry likely slots in at second or third line right wing. Like Pat said, he's a middle 6 forward, and that'll be a good chance for him to get some increased minutes and play with some good players. But then on the left side is where some of the question marks come in, because you do have Rickard Rakell who's going to take that top line left wing spot, and then you've got Richie, you've got Devin Shore who could play on the left, you've got then Maxime Comtois who maybe he'll start with the team, but he's only played 10 games and he spent the entire rest of the season in the QMJHL. And there's Max Jones who came up and looked really well, but the stats don't really line up with that. He got unlucky, but he didn't put up the points. So he's not a lock, I could say, because you look at Comtois and Jones are guys you could easily put down in San Diego. With their waiver exempt, you don't have to worry about Nick Delorier getting sent down there or Nick Ritchie getting sent down there.
Can we not talk about
else.
Nick Delorier ever, please? Can we not talk about it? The season hasn't even started. I don't want to talk about Nick Delorier.
He's already getting mad.
There's a chance that Nick Delorier or Devin Shore end up taking the spot.
Okay?
Nick Ritchie.
Not pretend. Don't let them develop.
When you look at the roster spots for this team coming up, the fact that 1, 2, 3 center is going to be Getzlaf, Henrique, Steele, I think we can all agree on that. And then fourth line center is either going to be Rowney or Grant. So that likely puts Lindstrom down in San Diego, and that moves Shore to the wing. So then you're on the left side. You've got Richie, who's likely going to take a spot. You've got Nick Delorier, who I don't think he should, but he'll likely take a left wing spot on this team unless he becomes a 13th forward. And then Devin Shore, who they're still paying money and is a serviceable forward, they'll probably play him as a third line winger. So that limits the amount of opportunities you have for both Comtois and Jones, or even one of them, to make the roster. So I think for those two guys, it will depend on how they do in camp and if they can, outplay some guys or start the season and play pretty well. But there's a lot going for them to start the season in San Diego just because of the fact that they can easily be sent down there and the Ducks don't have to worry about making additional roster moves.
All right, well, let's round up this third question here, and it goes to another thing that Eric Stevens on The Athletic had covered. Do the Ducks have enough depth at defense? So they lose Andy Walensky to the Flyers, Jacob Megna to Vegas, Jake Dotchin to the St. Louis Blues. So you're getting rid of some players on that end. Megna was actually a surprise to me, to be real with you guys, because he was the captain down in San Diego last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then right now they have 6 NHL defensemen signed to the team: Michael Delzato, Cam Fowler, Brendan Gooley, Corbinian Holzer, Hampus Lindholm, and Josh Manson. And to me, right away, I already stack them. It's Hampus and Manson, it's Fowler and Gooley, and then Delzato and Corbinian Holzer, and then whoever they want to pull up from San Diego. Maybe Josh Mahura gets a chance to come up into the lineup. I don't know. But I think I'm not too upset with the names I just read if we're talking about defense this year. I'm not really upset about that at all. As long as Brendan Gooley is able to get time when he's healthy and they look the same as last season with Cam Fowler. As long as they look the same, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm not a Debbie Downer. I mean, it's a solid B in my
okay.
opinion. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's not the top of the league, but it's not horrible. Whenever you got Lindholm and Manson, if that chemistry continues on,
It's kind of like the whole roster, right? Except for Gibson, the whole roster's kind of like, yeah, we're solid. We don't have any McDavids or Sean Couturier's or Mark Stones. But we got a lot of
middling
good
lineup.
players.
It's a bubble lineup. That's what it is.
Yeah. The big question comes down to another thing is can the Ducks shake all their injuries? Because if they start getting injuries on defense, then we start getting thinner.
God,
and
we
then
see it every year.
Well, who goes down? And then we're kind of in trouble. But the saving grace is that even if the Ducks don't have the strongest of defense, or they're not in that A category, they've got the two number one goalies, in my opinion, between John Gibson, who's an elite goalie, and then Ryan Miller, who's a capable number one, but is playing a backup role. So, I mean, any given night, you should have one of those two guys playing for you. They can make up for a B defense. And if the team's all playing better defensively and better offensively, they aren't going to get shelled nearly as much as they did in the first, 2/3 of last season. So there's a lot of room, again, for optimism, even though they're not technically high elite level as far as the whole defensive core.
I don't think the question's asking the right question. It asks if the Ducks have enough depth. I think they have enough depth on defense. It's how good is that depth? Because you've got, like Pat said, you've got Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson. That is a great pairing. You've got Goulet and Fowler that look good and that will likely get put together. And then after that, you've just got a lot of 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 5, 6, 7 guys in that position. You've got Larson, Holzer, you've got Yanni Hakanpää, you've got Michael Del Zotto, and then they brought in Chris Weidman, and then you still have Josh Mahura, who will likely start in San Diego, but there's a good chance he might see some time. So you've got, 6 guys there as potentials 5 or 6 on this team, or a 7th defenseman. They're not great. So like you said, if Fowler gets injured, or if Lindholm gets injured, or if Manson gets injured, there's depth there to replace them.
But you know what the key is?
Quality depth.
Eddie, the key is that there's only one player on the Ducks depth chart right now with the Stanley Cup, and they brought the ring into the room with Michael Del Zotto. So, all that experience from that cup run last year.
I don't think he has a cup. I don't think he has to go through petition for a cup. I don't know if he has one yet.
Hey, I saw him jump into the pool, okay? I saw him jump into the pool with the Stanley Cup.
He might have the Stanley Cup, but until he has a ring, I'm not going to call him a Stanley Cup champ.
Yeah, he's got to have the ring, and it's got to be on the outside of his glove, so that anytime someone tries to pull a move on it, goes no.
Check this, baby.
Go back. You go back to center ice. I'm Del Zotto.
It'll be interesting to see what they do and who they play in that 5 spot on the left side, because it could be Del Zotto, it could be Larson. I doubt it's Mahura, and even on the right side, it could be Holzer, it could be Hakanpää, it could be Chris Weidman. They could play a lefty on that side, so it'll be interesting to see what they do, because Weidman's played NHL time. He spent a lot of time with the AHL last year. Holzer was the same with the Ducks, so none of these guys are for sure NHL guys, and I think that's what the Ducks are kind of aiming for there, and guys who could swap between San Diego and Anaheim, because San Diego doesn't have a lot of defensive depth right now, losing Magna and Welinski. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But that 5-6 pairing, I think, is going to be an adventure for the Ducks for most of the season.
Well, we have a couple of quick hits here. Just some quick notes that happened over the last couple of weeks. Mostly the last 7 days, really, last week. Shattenkirk bought out by the New York Rangers. So staying on the defensive note here, I'm talking about depth defensemen here for the Ducks. He gets bought out after 2 seasons in New York. It was a big deal that he went there. Everyone made a big deal about him going there. He was excited to go to New York. It's where he wanted to go. He's had 2 bad seasons in New York. He's 30 years old. He hasn't played the same since leaving St. Louis. I think he had 1 goal and 17 assists last year. And he's not too good defensively. But there already is rumors out there that why don't the Ducks pick him up? I'm sure that every team in the league has their own rumor mill about Kevin Shattenkirk. But
Toronto. He's definitely wanted to go to Toronto.
He's most likely going to Toronto.
Everyone knows that.
Do you guys like the idea of him coming here? The guy made $6.56 or $6.6 million per season last year, and he's got 2 years left on that deal. Yeah, 6.65.
Yeah, my thought on it is.
So would you pay that amount of money? Because I know we don't have to pay that if we get it.
No. He was overpaid because he was the best defenseman available. He did have good seasons in St. Louis, but you can kind of attribute some of that with playing with Pietrangelo, All-Star. And then he went to Washington, really didn't help them out in their one cup run, before they actually won the cup. Signed as the biggest defensive free agent, got overpaid 4 years, and now has been bought out after 2 subpar years.
And those were his even strength stats. I believe overall he had 28 points. So just to clarify.
Yeah. So it's not like he's untalented, and it's not worth our time to investigate. It depends on that price level, and he's going to have to. He's had 2 bad years, and sometimes that happens where you play in one system on one team for a while, you move somewhere else, and everything you used to be good at just kind of falls away a little bit. The talent's still there, but it just doesn't click. So I think he signs maybe a 1-year contract somewhere. The Ducks, if they're interested, I would try and keep it at 2 or under million, and that's possible just because he just got paid no matter what. And a lot of times when they get bought out, they'll use a lower contract and a show-me contract, and the Ducks might be able to benefit, help solidify that maybe a little bit. But I'm not going to overpay for a 30-year-old guy who hasn't shown me anything since he played with an All-Star.
I would disagree a little bit because I think he was pretty good when he came over from Washington, had 14 points in 19 games, and had some really good years in St. Louis before. So I think, he got overpaid, but he kind of earned that contract that he got with the Rangers. And his first season with New York, he was injured for about half the season. He only played 46 games. He still put up 23 points. So in a full season, he's looking at about 42 points and 10 goals, which is right on par with what he was doing in St. Louis to begin with. So his only bad season was last year, where he still put up 28 points in 73 games. I think if you bring him in, he honestly brings you very similar impact to what Brendan Montour brought the Ducks. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset with me when they say that, comparing Shattenkirk to Montour, but they're both very good at zone entries, zone exits. Entry defense isn't their strong suit. Brendan Montour is honestly almost just as bad, if not worse, at entry defense than Shattenkirk has been over the last 3 years. And they're very, very similar in zone exit and zone entry efficiency, and their shot contributions are pretty much similar. You could argue that Shattenkirk's actually a little bit better at that. So over the last 3 seasons, that's Washington, New York for Shattenkirk. He's actually been better than Brandon Montour has been. The points are about the same. So if you're the Ducks and you can bring him in for 1 year, maybe 2 years, and you want to try and squeak out to make the playoffs, we talk about how the owners obviously want to make the playoffs and try and be competitive. It's good for good to market the team. It's good that they'll make money that way. I don't know if Shattenkirk automatically makes you a playoff team. He's still not the Shattenkirk of old when he was with St. Louis, but I don't think he's that bad. If you could get him for 1 or 2 years at $2 to $3 million, I would take it. I think the Ducks right now, when you look at the right side, the fact that they have to push Cam Fowler over there, it's only Josh Manson, and then after that, it's Hakanpää and Kirby Ninhold, so there's no depth whatsoever on that right side. So bringing in Shattenkirk, I think, makes this team a little bit better, and he gives you pretty much the exact same style of play and output to what Brandon Montour was bringing you.
It would be anti-bargain Bob, though, and that's the problem. I like the idea. Get him for cheap on a 1 or 2 year deal, but that's not a blue light special, man. That's not a $700K defenseman from Europe. I mean,
the second you put a M after the number, Bob Murray's out. I mean, there's got to be a K next to that. Otherwise, it's
unless
not
you're
really
35 and past your prime.
Unless you're 35.
When was the last time we had a stretch passer on the Ducks? A high percentage, a guy who is well above the average in stretch passing on the Ducks. Shattenkirk is per 60, he's about 0.92 stretch passes per game, and the NHL average is 0.36. He's in like the 96th percentile for stretch passes, so he's one of the top guys in the NHL when it comes to executing and attempting stretch passes in the game. The Ducks really haven't had a guy like that. I mean, it could work. It honestly could work. He could be a guy who could play on power play too, and a right shot help to that, because it's always nice to have a lefty and a right
quarterback on this power play anymore. I mean,
Bob Murray is
the closest thing we can see to that. I would love Shattenkirk, and the stretch pass stat you're throwing out there, I do like that, because with a group of young, fast players, stretching the ice is key to getting those guys in full stride. You see it all across the NHL. When you can stretch the ice like that, you're going to put your players in a position to beat defenders through the blue line.
For the right price.
I just wonder if that's like going to be a Ducks style, is to look for that. Like I could see like certain players are good at stretch passes because the way they create their offense and the way their players move, that facilitates them making longer passes, great long outlet passes that tend to work. Whereas other teams maybe play a more conservative style on that breakout, and you can look at their number. Oh, he doesn't really do a whole lot. He's not really good at the
Don't be fooled
breakouts.
by the Carlisle system of going along the wall for a zone entry and then throwing the puck at center ice. I mean, that's what they did all year last year. Hit the blue line, throw to the middle. Hit the blue line, throw to the middle. There's no
that's
move.
what I'm saying is like, I'd be interested to see, because a Montour didn't work out under a Carlisle regime or, system. So even like having Montour here might work out. I'm thinking maybe some of the players that we already have are going to be a little bit more prone to making those good outlet passes that we haven't seen in the last 3 years, because it's been such a clog in the middle and how we break out and how we actually attack the offensive zone.
You're right, because you saw last year, like as you mentioned earlier today, is the way the team played under Bob Murray was on the bench. I mean, you saw how often did we see Hampus Lindholm drive the net in the last 20 games of the season? I
saw Fowler making 60, 80-foot passes trying to get it down there. I mean, just things that, normally it was like, hey, let's try and figure out how we're going to get out of here. It seemed more backward passing than forward passing.
Oh, God. And then no forward would come back to help the defense. The defense is sitting there behind the blue line going, who am I getting the puck to? Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to it. I think that we could still possibly have this, because I think we have gifted passers on defense that could also do what Shattenkirk does.
It won't hurt to add depth, though, on that right side.
I would not disagree with that.
Yeah, and I don't think you're bringing him in to center the player, like the style around him, so that he's always looking for stretch passes. He's just one of the only guys the Ducks would have that are capable of doing that effectively, which is not a bad thing to have when you have him on the ice. And like Pat said, you've got young fast forwards who are looking to get up the ice, and Ondrej Kase and Sam Steele and Max Jones, Troy Terry, Ricard Raquel. Like, I think that would be beneficial. We've seen Getzlaf try that on a lot of occasions when he's in his own zone.
He's probably the best stretch passer on the Ducks.
Yeah, and again, you're not bringing in Shattenkirk just for stretch passing, and you're not bringing him in to become a Stanley Cup contender. You're bringing him in because he's what the Ducks don't have right now, and they have no depth whatsoever on the right side. When you look at it, honestly, it's just Josh Manson. Really, like, it goes from Josh Manson to Corbinian Holzer. There's nothing there. And then Cam Fowler is being pushed over to the right side, or Brendan Gooley is being pushed over to the right side. And if you play two lefties on the bottom pairing, then you've got maybe Del Zotto or Larson or somebody else moving to the right side as well. So I just think it makes too much sense for the Ducks. You've got a righty that you can bring in with no depth right now. He fills a hole on that blue line that you don't have anything you haven't had since last year when you had Brendan Montour. And if you get him for cheap for 1 year, it's a prove me season for him. And, if he goes off and gets a bigger contract after that, so be it. You're not, he's 30 years old. You're not looking to keep him around for a long period of time, but it helps the Ducks at least fill a need for this season, where if, they're going to want to do well. You look at all the players' comments, you look at Dallas Eakins, they want to be a good team this year. They want to compete for a playoff spot. And, Shattenkirk fills that need for them.
Drinking game, next Bucks and Brews. Anyone who says Dallas Eakins rather than Akins has to take a shot. Because I heard Eddie just say it. Eddie just said Eakins.
Damn
I was like, yes, that's our drinking game this year.
Well, for Eddie, it'll be a shot of water.
And we'll keep track of it. Yeah. We'll have people help us keep track of it during post-game. So it adds up until you hit Pucks and Brews.
Oh, man.
It's going to be so good. Yes, bring Shattenkirk. We need that right side depth. I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. I think we're all on board with it. Speaking of contracts, though, John Gibson might have the best contract in the NHL for goaltenders, considering how good he is. We just saw Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky get gigantic, metric tons of cash dumped at the front lawn of their house for not being as good as John Gibson. So as much crap as we like to give Bob Murray, for his mistakes in bringing in older players, he's done a really good job of getting steals out of contracts. I mean, Ricard Raquel is the first one that pops to mind, but now looking at the goalie, the goalie environment in the NHL, Gibby's got a steal. I mean, making under $7 million is pretty incredible for a guy who should have won the Vezina on a walk this most recent spring.
I'll agree with some of that.
Where are
Yeah.
you getting this in your head that Gibby is not a steal of a contract, but these guys are
No,
getting paid $10
he is.
million
It was
a
the
year?
Vesna walk that threw me off there for a
He
second.
was insanely.
For 2/3 of the season, I 100% agree with you.
He still should have won an award.
Yeah. So, and I wouldn't really even fault him for the last third of the season, mostly because he had to do Vesna worthy work in the first 2/3 solidly above everybody else, even to be noticed. And by that point, he was exhausted.
His goals above saved above average is still higher than everyone else. So it's like, how do you fault that guy for any of that? He still should walk away with the Vesna.
The funny part is that like a lot of teams are like, oh, let's get into the advanced or fancy stats on the players, but then when it comes to goalies, like, well, what's his goals against? What's his save percentage? How many games did he win? Shutouts?
Yeah, how many wins? He didn't have 52 wins?
Just give me the 4. If you give me the 4, I know how good he is.
Did you just do the Drake meme? It's like
what?
He did the Drake meme. It was like goals saved above average, and it's like wins.
All right, I don't need more information. Don't need any more. Just those 4. So yeah. So as far as goaltending goes, Gibson's top 5 in my opinion, and he's right up there.
2.
There's a lot of good talent. I think Vasilevsky is also one of those players who's in the top 5 in my opinion.
Plays on the
now
best
he
team
may
in
not
hockey.
have overwhelming technique or talent as well as Gibson, but his size makes up for it. And so at the end of the day, even if he's not necessarily at that technical standpoint, he makes up for it in other ways and becomes a good goalie. Bobrovsky is also, in my opinion, one of those goalies that can take a Columbus team and make them a playoff team where it was never really possible. Without him, Columbus is never a playoff team. They're getting paid because you have to have that, and the teams that paid him needed what they had. I mean, if they don't have that, then they're not competitive. They're not going anywhere. So I understand that they got paid. Gibson is, in my opinion, right up there with them. And at the price we got him, it's fabulous for the Ducks. So that contract had looked good to me at the beginning. It looks good now. It'll look good later. It's all good from beginning to end.
We have to make our own meme, by the way. Sorry, Eddie. We have to make our own meme. We
Yeah,
got to do that.
definitely.
It's like goals saved above average. Nah.
Just give me 4.
Wins?
I just don't need all.
Yeah, I
all
want the
that
wins.
stuff.
Bring the
goalies,
wins.
I don't care.
Yeah.
How many shutouts? All right. Don't start throwing saved above average. I don't need that. That's GMs. I was impersonating GMs.
Man, it's just it. I think the one reason when you look at Bobrovsky, the contract he got, $10 million per season, and Vasilevsky $9.5. A big reason both of those guys got paid. Bobrovsky has 2 Veznas. Vasilevsky has 1. You look in a contract discussion, that's going to come up, and that's going to equal to an increased pay rate. And if John Gibson had won a Vezina this year or last year, I'm sure when his contract came up, he would have got paid around the same amount of money, just because that raises the value so much. But when you look at the fact he's only making 6.4, he's still the 7th highest paid goaltender in the league, which is insane. Because if you looked at that on the player side, 6.4 million is probably somewhere in 40 or 50 range in how much players are getting paid. But Carey Price,
that's a third line winger.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah.
Kevin Hayes makes more. Carey Price, Bobrovsky, Lundqvist, Vasilevsky, Tuukka Rask, and Marc-Andre Fleury all make more money than John Gibson. And the guys who make close to the same amount of money as Timur Hellebuck, Holtby, Crawford, Corey Schneider, Jonathan Quick, Martin Jones, and Pekka Rinne. And Pekka Rinne makes $5 million. So honestly, I don't think you can really argue with any other guy there. Like, John Gibson has to have the best contract for goaltenders in the league. I can't argue for any other guy. Maybe Frederik Andersen making $5 million per season. You can put in that discussion of Ben Bishop making 4.9 as well. That can throw in there. But Jordan Binnington just got paid 4.4. He makes $2 million less than John Gibson for having one good season. The fact that John Gibson has been good pretty much since the start of his career. He's statistically one of the best goaltenders in the league, and he only makes $6.4 million. So this is huge for the Ducks going forward. When you look at trying to compete again with John Gibson in the crease, they're not looking at a guy making $10, $9, $8 million that's going to restrict them from going out and improving other areas. So, I mean, John Gibson is really the only superstar that the Ducks have on their roster right now, and the fact that you're able to lock him down for only just over $6 million is pretty crazy for them.
So does that mean we're all agreeing Bob Murray is good at some contracts?
Yes. If you didn't
Yes,
say some,
yes and no.
That's weird. I thought that would hurt a lot more for you, Pat, saying yes like that.
it depends on who he's signing, and
Or when he did it.
Yeah, when he
I think
goes,
he learned his lessons.
Has he though? I mean,
Does he get credit though? Like, does he get credit for this? Because when you look at the guy like Carey Price, Vezina winner, so Bobrovsky's a Vezina winner, Vasilevsky's a Vezina winner. These are all the guys. That's the only way I feel like if you're a goaltender, you get paid $10, $9, $8 million. You know, Henrik Lundqvist and Tuukka Rask. Tuukka Rask is only $600K more than John Gibson. Same with Marc-Andre Fleury. So it's like John Gibson is a highly paid goaltender, but it's the Vezina I feel like that takes you to that other category. Holtby, I believe, signed his contract before he got a Vezina. You look at what Connor Hellebuck signed for having one or two good seasons with Winnipeg. It was $6.1 million. So that's, I guess, the going rate for a very good goaltender who just hasn't won the Vezina is around $5 or $6 million. So I don't know if it's credit to Bob Murray as much because, like you said, just like for the Vezina, where goals saved above average and numbers like the analytics side of it for goaltenders don't come into the equation as much as they do for players. It's all about wins and save percentage and what you've done for the team and if you've won personal awards. I feel like that just as much goes into contract discussions for goaltenders as it does for major awards.
That's because no one understands goaltending.
Would you guys literally pay $70 million for Sergei Bobrovsky?
Yeah, I have $70 million.
I mean, if you're a GM,
hang out at my house for a
you
while.
ass.
Would you pay Vasilevsky $9.5 per season?
Yes.
I would definitely pay him over Sergei Bobrovsky. Yeah, I mean, Bob is
it
30.
depends on the length of the contract. You said 7 years, right, for Bobrovsky?
Yeah, he's 30 years old.
I think Vasilevsky got 8.
In fact, he turns 31 before the season starts.
Yeah.
This contract's going to look like shit in about 3 years.
Well, Vasilevsky will be 33 at the end of his deal.
It's not bad. At the end of his deal's not bad.
Yeah.
You're getting all his prime at 9.5. You know the cap's going to go up. It's going to happen.
So, let's put it this way. If Florida had to pay Bobrovsky that and give him that length of the contract because he was going to get possibly that with the lower years, and they needed a goalie. They had a goalie retiring. They had goalies they were getting rid of. They had no
move until the last 2 years.
That's what you got to pay for the top goalie.
Yeah, but the problem is like we had this argument about Bobrovsky when it first went down with Florida, and you just drafted Spencer Knight, and you have a young team. You're in no rush, and you go out and you sign Bobrovsky for 7 years. Like that move made no sense for them. And honestly, like Vasilevsky, I'd probably pay him 9.5 for the amount of time they did. But I find it hard. You know, I need to see him in a position like John Gibson, not on a super all-star team where you have Kucherov and Point and Stamkos and Hedman and just like a ridiculous team that was almost unstoppable last season in the run that they had.
Until they played Columbus.
He was, yeah, like he's good. There's no question about it. He's good, and he's probably a top 5 goaltender in this league. But how good is he, and how good is that team? How much does that team influence how good he is? That's what I want to say. I think he's a great goaltender. I think he's an excellent goaltender, but I don't think he is a number 1 goaltender. And I think John Gibson, when you look at it, and everything's all said and done, I think he's a better goaltender than Ondrej Vasilevsky.
Let's move on here. Let's talk about breakout candidates are coming. Ian Tulloch from The Athletic talked about Ondrej Kase being his number 1 player poised for a breakout year. Kase also is only 23 years old, by the way, guys. He's got 2 years left on his deal where he's only making, I think he's making less than $3 million a season. It's like $2.6 million. He was second in the league in 5-on-5 shot attempts per 60. Only Brendan Gallagher had more than him. And this kid just has to remain healthy for him to be a star here in Anaheim. He's probably the best right wing we have on this team, in my opinion, for a pure offensive player. And I'm excited for this season, too, as long as McDermott doesn't come across the middle and elbow him in the head in preseason. I think we'll be good to go.
Yeah, I've been waiting for the Kase effect that kind of happened, where he just does what he needs to do. Because it doesn't matter if he plays the 4th line, 3rd line, 2nd line, or 1st line, and who he plays with, he generates offense. He generates shots, and he generates momentum. He's a crazy fun person to watch play the game, and what I call a game breaker, just someone that doesn't need anybody to make him better. He is just that good. His problem is the limited time he's had because he's been young under a Carlisle system. It takes a while to earn that trust to try and move back up. And then his injuries. I mean, he's got a lot of concussions already for a 23-year-old, and we just hope it's not going to be one of those things that just keeps happening and keeps limiting his ability, because he's got the talent to do it, and he can play in this league at a very high level. I think we'll get a really good idea this year. I think he gets a real good shot at playing on the top line because of how good he is, and the fact that there is no more Corey Perry, kind of almost, as
Did
that
you like
blocker.
that in the Athletic article, that side-by-side comparison? Like, that literally should have been the reason why they bought Corey Perry out. They're like, look who you're holding back. So, I mean, this guy should be on there, and it should be a fun season to watch, but back to my mind, he's one good hit away from he's missing 30 games again, and then it's a moot point. Or taking a face-off and ripping his shoulder out. That was the weirdest injury of the year.
Just some guys, man. I don't know.
Increased minutes for him, hopefully, should do wonders.
Yeah,
he only averaged
kids 18 minutes a night. He needs 18 minutes a night.
Exactly. He averaged, I think, like 15 or just over 15 minutes last year. If he was 17 or 18 minutes a night, that's 2 extra minutes he's on the ice, and second in the league in 5v5 shot attempts per 60. Only, like you said, Brendan Gallagher was the only one better than them. He had 21.7 5v5 shot attempts per 60. Kase did, and you look at this top 10. Like, not only is it surprising that he is number 2, but having Gallagher number 1, even though Gallagher scored 33 goals, you think, oh, well, how elite is this list if Brendan Gallagher's number 1? You have Kase 2. You have Timo Meier, who scored 30 goals, at number 3. Philip Forsberg, number 4, scored 28 goals. Arvidsson, who had like 24 goals in 50 games, was number 5. Evander Kane with 30 goals was number 6. Matthews was on there as well with 37 goals. Ovechkin with 51 was on there. The last guy on there was Tarasenko with 33 goals. The only guy on there who wasn't on pace for over 30 goals was Ryan Donato in Minnesota, who had 4 goals I think in 11 games. And he still had a pretty good season with Minnesota after getting moved over there from Boston. Like, that's some elite company when you think Ovechkin, Matthews, Tarasenko, Meier, Kane, Gallagher, Forsberg, Arvidsson. That's the company that Ondrej Kase was keeping last season, and of course only playing 30 games and getting injured. He still had 11 goals last year. If he can stay healthy for 70, 80 games this year and still keep up that pace and shot attempts, there's no question he'll score 25, 30 goals. Like, that's the type of company he's keeping. If he does that, you think this guy's a former 7th-round pick playing. Now he's going to play 17 minutes a night.
And he did it all under Randy Carlisle, guys.
Imagine, like, a good system.
I'd be surprised to see how many minutes a night all those guys I talked about as well, how much they played per night, because I'm assuming 5-on-5, and then you look at it, it was probably about 16, 17 minutes a night, and they got a lot of power play one time. That is looking like what Ondrej Kase is going to get this year. Imagine if he plays with Getzlaf and Raquel 5-on-5 for most of the time, then gets power play one time with Raquel and Getzlaf, you would assume, and maybe, Cam Fowler, Kevin Shattenkirk if they bring him in, and if he's the trigger man on that power play, like, there is some high profile potential for Ondrej Kase this year if he can just stay healthy. Like, that's the big if for him. If he can stay healthy, he's a guaranteed 20-25 goals, and the ceiling for 30, 35 even. Like, I know we might be overhyping him a bit, but that's the type of pace he was on last year. So there is. It's not like we're blowing smoke here. Like, there's a potential that he could be a 30-plus goal scorer next year.
They need
I think a good comparison would be Arvidsson. It's a similar height, style of play, but they're both lethal when they need to be and when they can't be, and once again dynamic, where all of a sudden they just make a play and you're like, whoa, look at that move. That was awesome. That was pretty cool. I didn't know he had that, but they do it on a consistent basis. And that's a dynamic player that you don't necessarily get all the time. But when you see it, you recognize it. You just can't put your finger on why it's good. It just is. And I think Arvidsson if you're looking for a comparison that has maybe a little bit more NHL experience and what they've done, Arvidsson is a very good comparison.
I was thinking him or Timo Meier. I think Timo Meier is a great comparison.
And they're both in there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm excited about this, man. I haven't bought a player jersey since Ryan Getzlaf, 'cause I knew that he was never going anywhere. So I have a Getzlaf jersey. I have a Korea jersey because he's certainly not playing ever again. So I know that's safe.
You're safe.
I'm torn. Like, I want to see Kase get re-signed before I even think about it. But I love that kid, man. I would totally buy that jersey. He's a great player on this team, and I really hope that he's able to stay healthy and show his full potential, because that's really going to be helpful for the Ducks as they transition into this new era of Aikens. So let's go back to the prospects. Scott Wheeler, who was kind enough to spend his time with us on the show, us meaning Eddie. Eddie did a really great interview with Scott Wheeler from The Athletic. He came on and talked about his 50 prospects in the NHL. Pissed off a lot of Ducks fans, and I'm sure other teams had some upset moments too. But that's just part of the deal. I mean, these guys are going in and doing their own evaluation. You can't please everybody all the time. So, looking at the Ducks, everyone they didn't see that they had three players in the top 50. They just saw Maxime Comtois was missing on the list. Everyone's pissed about that. But we'll get to him in a minute. I want to talk about Trevor Zegras. We don't need to go full in depth on here because that interview was great. But looking at this Athletic article, is someone getting arrested at your house?
Are you getting arrested, Eddie?
Oh, is Eddie getting arrested?
I don't know. Where is it? It's not my end.
It wasn't my house.
No, it was my end.
Oh, the Mountie's after you, buddy.
Dude, a moose with a siren attached to him is rolling up to Eddie's house.
Just making sure everyone's got maple syrup.
Yeah.
Whoa, we have to add. So if we're having Aikens and Eakins as a game, we have to have Zegras and Zegras as a game as well, because it's Trevor Zegras and Dallas Aikens, and we're gonna say
we can only drink so much, Eddie.
A ton of times this year.
That's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be fun. We can play that game. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's talk about him. It's noted that Wheeler had said that he's probably among the highest in the class with ceiling. And the reason being is because he has such offensive talent coming in from this draft. I mean, his playmaking ability is through the roof. The kid is just filthy. He made some moves the other day. What was it? Is it not World Juniors? What's going on?
World Junior. It's the World Junior Summer Showcase.
Summer Showcase. Yeah, he's filthy. The guy makes ridiculous plays between the legs, able to find players off the rush. I can't wait for him to get to Anaheim. Yeah. But with all that talent comes risk, right? And that's part of the reason why some people are not extra hyped on him. Not that he's not good, but they're more or less worried about the riskiness of his style of play and if it's going to fit on an NHL team. But how do you guys take that, him being at 29 in the article here?
Being at 29 as the 29th best prospect in the entire league is not bad.
No.
Right? Like, I think when people are looking at the recency of him going 9th overall in this year's draft and forgetting, like, this it kind of incorporates the last 3 or 4 drafts when you look at prospects. Like, if you took all the guys who went, 9, 9, 9, and 9, right? That's 36 guys. Like, he is in that group with those guys, and obviously those guys who've fallen out and gone above there, but that's where you would expect him to be, is somewhere in the top 36 when you look at the prospects from the last 4 drafts. The fact that he's number 29 is nothing to cry about. Like, it's a great spot for him, and I think there is potential, like Scott said on the podcast, to move up and be better than the 29 spot just because of the offensive ability and the potential that he has. But there's risk. He's a little bit small. He's smaller than a lot of guys who've come out of that program, just not in height, but in size. And that's why going to the college route for him is such a good route for him, that he's going to be able to build up some muscle and physically play against guys who are a lot older than him. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit for him. But he's a great player. And like you said, you look at the highlights for him, not just last year, but so far recently in the World Junior Summer Showcase. The offensive potential he has is extremely exciting. It's something we haven't seen in Anaheim in a long time. And I think he would be a lot higher if he was, a bigger guy, or there was a little bit less risk to his game, that he played a little bit safer and showed flashes of that brilliance or maybe some consistency in that fact. But I think when all is said and done, there are going to be guys who were ranked ahead of them in this list that he'll eventually be better than as a prospect, but you have to calculate risk when you're ranking these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be our number 1 center at some point, down the road, if he sticks with the organization. No doubt in my mind. Yeah,
like 3 to 4 seasons, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take a little while. Like Eddie said, you're going to have to pack on a little bit of meat there. But I mean, it's a playmaking ability that he has, a lot like Ryan Getzlaf, but I would say a faster, quicker, more dynamic, and creative.
It's that new wave NHL. It's you don't need the
that's
hulking
where,
body in the corner.
That's where it kind of fits in. So where hey, give him a year or two to bulk on at least a little bit of mass, so he's not getting bowled over. That sort of deal. Other than that, he can be, slippery and hard to control and contain. And especially if his vision and his playmaking ability is there, not necessarily score every goal or every shot he takes, but neither is Ryan Getzlaf, and he's, a future Hall of Famer. I mean, so I liken him a lot to Ryan Getzlaf, just minus the size, but that actually works in the new NHL. So I'm happy with where he's at. I got to see what he's going to do over the next couple of years as he develops and becomes an even better prospect. He starts climbing that list, in my opinion.
He's a lot like Matt Barzal, and the just how shifty and creative he is. But I think he's a better passer than Matt Barzal is, and not to say Matt Barzal is a bad passer. But I just think he's extremely talented. And Barzal came into the league as a skinny, lanky kid as well, and he did. I mean, he did more. He did more than fine with the New York Islanders, and exactly. And Pettersson's a bit different in just the his pure goal scoring ability. But yeah, Pettersson is one of the lankiest, skinniest kids I've ever seen to come into the NHL at that age, and he did perfectly fine. He got injured a couple times, but I thought he was just going to be one hit and done the way he looked coming into the NHL. So Zegras, there I go. Trevor Zegras could come in at the end of this year. He could come in at the end of this year, and like you said, he might one and done in college and come play the last couple of games of the season, depending on how far Boston University goes, and surprise a lot of people. And he could start next year with the Ducks and have that type of impact, that type of Matt Barzal 50, 60, 70 point impact in his first season. That's a reach, and that's a lot of optimism there. But I don't think it's a stretch to say in 2 or 3 years he could be this team's number one point producer. Like that's just the ability he has if he can reach that ceiling.
I agree, man. Yeah, I'm excited for this kid to come here. Sorry, Jay.
No, it's all right. We've already.
I'm just excited for him to come here. I think he could definitely take that role, and he's not going to be taking it away from anybody. Getzlaf's going to be at the end of his career. Adam Henrique, we'll see where he's at, but I still think you want to put that more dynamic forward and push the older guys to the bottom of the depth chart until they finish it out. I mean, that's not a slight on those guys. It's just the natural progression of the game and the way these players are playing in the league nowadays. And it depends if he can come in and carry the top 1C role, but I don't see why he can't. I mean, this kid was drafted 9th overall for a reason, and a highly touted prospect at that. And also, thanks to him for coming on the show as well. We interviewed him a few weeks ago, and so that was, we've been very lucky to have those interviews, as Eddie called interview season. So if you want to check those out, we have an interview with Scott Wheeler. We just put out one for Rich Hammond, and then if you want to go back and check out, I'm going to missay it, Zegras, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it right. I don't have to drink today. Sweet. Until later when Jason comes over. Troy Terry at 44. How do you guys... I like that. I mean, he's a strong second line player. Right? I mean, he would be an outstanding third line guy if you have someone in front of him. But he's one of those guys that could play in the second line without a problem at all. He's not ultra flashy, but I mean, as Scott Wheeler said, he's a strong player. How did he describe it, Eddie? It was something along the lines of he doesn't do anything exceptional, but he's just good. Right?
Does
he's just
everything
good at everything.
well.
Yeah. He said that about Troy Terry and Sam Steele, where they're just good players all around. Like, they don't do anything great, but they're good at pretty much everything. They're good in their own zone. They're offensively gifted in the way that they can produce in a middle six role. They just don't drive play on a line. They're not an elite player. They're not a top line guy. If you're a top line guy, generally you have to drive play. And Troy Terry isn't going to be that, but there's nothing wrong with that. You look at the fact, I think, what they drafted him in the 5th round, and you're going to get this guy who could be a 40, 50 point producer in a middle six role. That's more than you could hope for in a 5th round pick. And we were just talking about Ondrej Kase, who was a 7th round pick, so testament to the Ducks drafting, getting these types of players.
Yeah, exactly. I'm far more optimistic about how Troy Terry is, towards the end of this season than he was at the beginning of this season. I was hearing about Troy Terry, and then I kept seeing him play, and I'm like, this kid's not ready. Either the talent's not there, or there's a lot of development that needs to happen. And then he spends a short little time in the AHL, comes back, and it's a completely different player. And it's one that's not afraid. It's not one, that shied away from taking chances on the offensive zone. I'd be more, interested to see what he does under the new coaching staff, and one that he's familiar with and thrived under. So I think if he's given a little bit more freedom to be creative, especially if he starts playing in the top 2, maybe even top 3, even if he plays with like younger players and he plays with Sam Steele or Jones, that creativity may really kind of kick in, and you can see him put up some serious goals, because that's really kind of what they brought him for, was to kind of get that depth scoring. I think he can
he's
do
going to
it.
be a 20 goal scorer. I think that's what he's going to be in his NHL career, as a 20 goal guy.
Yeah, and you need those in your lineup,
for
one way or the other.
It's hard to buy 20 goals in today's NHL. It's tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, if you look at the future of the right side for the Ducks, if you got Ondrej Kase, who could be anywhere from 20 to 30, if you've got Silverberg, who's good for over 20 per season, if you've got Troy Terry, who could be a consistent 20 goal scorer, that's 3 guys in your top 9 that are on the right side that are 20 goal scorers. Like, that is not a bad situation to be in.
No.
When you look at the future of the Ducks going forward, and all 3 of those guys are going to be there for the next 4 or 5 years until Jakob Silfverberg's new contract expires. That's pretty good when you look at if the Ducks are going to be competitive again in the next 3 or 4 seasons, and those guys all fulfill that and get to being 20 goal scorers and impact goal scorers. That's a pretty good spot to be in.
I know that some people rubbed them the wrong way when Wheeler was talking about Sam Steele. They were like, there's nothing special about him. And what people need to understand about that is special means you're Connor McDavid.
Elite.
You're Kucherov. You're Sidney Crosby. Exactly. You're the elite class. You don't have to be special to be a good player in the NHL. You don't need to have that. Not every team has those guys. The Ducks don't have that guy on their roster right now, unless you're looking in net. But Sam Steele, I'll take him all day as a second C. You need that guy. You need somebody to come in and dominate on a second line. And I think both these guys are going to be dominant second line players, and that's a great thing to have, because that eventually means you're one piece away from getting that elite piece. I mean, not that those are easy to get at all, but I mean, if you need to add that, you can maybe add that in free agency, maybe make a little overpay for a guy who's been in the league. Or maybe you draft well and get lucky. Maybe Zegras comes out and becomes that player as he ages into the system. So I like both these players. I wasn't upset at all at 44 or 47.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just one other thing. I mean, take into consideration too, second year players, Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, both first round draft picks. They were the third made up part of the kid line in 2007. And they eventually became, the face of the franchise for that generation. I mean, these guys won't necessarily get to that level, but I mean, at this point, they kind of have that kid line thing going, and they'll eventually be that second line. And then you add in Zegras into that. I mean, this is a team that's going to be built pretty well. So I don't mind them starting at the third and saying, the highest, prospect level. But the fact that we got 3 in the top 50, that's pretty good for any team to have.
Yeah, the thing I was most, impressed with Sam Steele's development is it changed a lot for what I expected from him. You look at the 130-point season he had with Regina, and I watched a lot of his play there. Not necessarily he was bad in his own zone, but that team was just so good, and he was so dynamic offensively. You didn't really get to see a lot of the responsibility on the defensive end from him. It wasn't like he was bad and making mistakes. You just didn't see a lot of it. You just saw the offense. It was 130
wait for
points.
The offense.
and then he went back, and the next year after that, he didn't have as great a season, but he went to the World Juniors with Canada and played well and played a good kind of second line 1A, 1B role there and played good defensively. I believe they won a gold medal with Canada that year too. And then he comes in to the NHL and the AHL, and all of a sudden he just looks like a really toolsy center. He defensively, he's responsible. He can play well in his own zone. He's decent at faceoffs. He doesn't get out muscled off the puck, which is something I didn't get to see from him before. And yeah, the offense at that level didn't transition over, but he's still a highly creative player. And if you put him with the right guys, if he can get to the ceiling where he's normally a 40, 50-point guy, if you put him with some elite goal scorers or some very talented 20, 30 goal scorers, that could increase his totals. You're looking at a second-line 50, 60-point center. That's great for a player that you drafted 30th overall in the first round. If he's good on both ends and can put up 50 or 60 points in a very good year, and then you put him behind a guy like Trevor Zegras, who you hope has a 80 point ceiling, and when you look at the potential for him, that's an amazing 1-2 punch down the middle that you could run with in the future. Then this is all ifs, right? Like if they could hit that potential, if they're going to do that. But if that ends up being the case, that's pretty impressive for the Ducks to put those two together.
What about Maxime Comtois being left off? It's not upsetting to me. I don't think he's had enough playing time to garner any sort of expectation right now.
I'd want to see more. He didn't disappoint in the 10 games that he played. It was a nice little surprise. Well, look at this kid. But given the way that the contracts ended up having to work out, especially with the QMJL, he had to end up going back there, and really he shouldn't be in that league. And of course he's going to dominate. He's older, he's bigger, and he's playing against younger, smaller kids. So I'm not opposed to it. I'd want to see a little bit more where he's going to have the same or somewhat same level of competition, which is why I'm not opposed to him necessarily starting in the AHL, see where he gets to, let him see if he's dominating that, then, hey, pump him up. But, if it's like, oh, okay, I'm playing against men, now it's a little bit different. But, I mean, he showed, really, he played really well in the playoffs in the AHL. So, I would say he's, 51?
I mean, he's easily Mario Lemieux. I mean, he scored a goal on his first shift on his first shot, just like Mario Lemieux did back in 84.
But it was against Martin Jones.
Well, I'm sure Martin Jones was way better than the guy that Lemieux scored against. Let's just be real about that one, too.
Well, not according to you, but okay.
Jones is not a good goalie. That's a conversation for a Patreon
Another
podcast.
Day.
Yeah, Maxime Comtois was a guy I don't want to say I agreed with being left off, but I can understand it. And like this is people have to realize this is the top 50 prospects in the entire NHL among 31 teams, and being at 51 is not bad. It doesn't mean you're not a good player. It doesn't mean Maxime Comtois is not going to be a good player if he's the 51st best prospect in the NHL right now. Like a lot of these guys on this list are projected top 6 forwards or top 4 defensemen, and Maxime Comtois is still in that argument. And even Scott Wheeler said on the podcast that he would take arguments all day for including Comtois anywhere from 40 to 50 and taking a guy off the list there. So I think just when you look at the fact that some of these guys that he had in the list had played in more competitive leagues and had maybe either a little bit more NHL experience or just developed a little bit quicker than Comtois has. I think Comtois is a little bit still raw. He dominated the QMJHL, was one of the best players there, and that's why he's in consideration for the top 50. But a lot of these guys above him have done a little bit more than that or dominated a little bit better leagues. And yes, Comtois did well, but it was 10 games. We've seen players start off their careers amazing in their first 10 games and nothing's come from it. And then obviously we don't hope that's the case for Maxime Comtois. But it's hard to include him in that top 50 or even like anywhere above the top 40 when that's all you're going off of is a 10-game sample size in the NHL, a handful of games in the AHL during the conditioning stint, and dominating 2 seasons in the QMJHL. It's just not enough for me to say that he should be in the top 50. And a lot of people just are overhyped on what he did in the beginning of the season, and I think that's why a lot of Ducks fans were upset that he wasn't going to be there. He still could be their best prospect when you look at everything before this year's draft and Trevor Zegras. He could potentially be better than Sam Steele or Max Jones or Troy Terry, but he doesn't exactly have the resume to prove that yet, and I think that's why you can't put him above Troy Terry or Sam Steele, who spent 30-plus games in the NHL last year and played significant time in the AHL. They just have more experience than he does at that point.
Time will tell.
Yeah, that's all we can say about it is time will tell. We have one more quick thing here before we get to the Will Francis interview. The Ducks odds were put up by a gentleman named Jeff Sherman at Golf Odds, which is pretty funny, by the way. But their odds are at 80.5 points for the season, would make them the 4th worst team in the league. Do you guys think they go above that this year?
Yeah, well, they had 80 points last year, so it would be basically the same type of season they had last year. And I think the only teams he had worse than them were like L.A., Ottawa, and I can't remember the other team, maybe Buffalo. But it was LA and Ottawa on another team, but the only teams he had worse than the Ducks. I think Detroit was the other one.
Possible. I'd
Like,
say Vancouver's were. I mean, there's a handful of teams that we beat this year that we, in my opinion, last year is just like, if you're going off of last year's numbers, 2/3 of that you just completely tarnished or tainted your reasoning behind it. If you look at last year and try and evaluate what last year did versus what this year is, you're pulling it straight. You're going off of bad intel.
yeah, I think I can understand where they're coming from, though. If you look at it from the outside looking in, the Ducks did not add anybody significant. They didn't, they lost Corey Perry, and yeah, they have a new coach coming in. But you're looking at it from the outside saying, well, they didn't bring anybody in. The odds are pretty much close to the same one what they did last year. They've got about the same roster. But then when you're more in tune with the Ducks roster and you look at the fact they've got a lot of young players coming into the lineup that are going to have second seasons that they're hopefully going to improve on. The injury situation is hopefully going to be better. You add all that in, and John Gibson being John Gibson, the Ducks should be higher than that, you would hope. Maybe, I don't want to say they're going to be over 90 points because that's a bit of a reach still, I think. But I think they'll be around that, 87, 88, 89, 90 point range, and maybe more if things go well. But I don't think you can put them guaranteed over 90 yet.
Well, we'll have to get to that definitely as the season gets closer. We'll do our full season preview and talk about that. We'll make some real wagers here. We always do that, and then we forget what we wager halfway through the season, and then no one has to pay out anything.
I think the only wager we made was that you said Kovalchuk was going to be a 30-goal scorer this year.
I don't remember that at all. I think I need the audio on that one to have any sort of clarity in this.
You pull that audio, Ed.
Yeah, come on, Ed. You have all the time in the world right now, my friend. So with that, let's get to Will Francis. He was the Ducks' 6th-round pick this last season. He was playing in the USHL with the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. 6'7" defender, great kid. Thanks for coming on the show, and you guys will like it.
All right, welcome back to the Forever Mighty podcast. We've got another special guest, Anaheim Ducks 6th-round draft pick, Will Francis. How's it going, Will?
Good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. I mean, it's been a bit of a crazy couple months for you, right? I mean, how's everything been since the draft? Have you had any time to unwind at all?
Yeah, it's definitely been a whirlwind of the past couple months with the season ending in May there and the draft in the next month in June. So, yeah, I just had a good few days off for the 4th of July, spent some good time with family and friends, and now it's time to get back to training.
Right, yeah, you got the season coming up. You've probably been asked this question a million times already at the draft with all the media and everything, but take us through that moment when you found out you were picked by the Ducks and all the emotions that you were going through.
Yeah, really, Anaheim wasn't really a team that I thought was going to take me, and then while I was sitting there and heard my name called, it was definitely an ecstatic feeling.
Did you have any contact with the Ducks before, or was it just you just didn't have any idea? Did you have any feeling that maybe a different team was going to take you, or?
Yeah, I had a couple interviews with the Ducks, but I went out to the Toronto Maple Leafs combine and had a good showing there. So yeah, I talked to a lot of teams, but definitely it's surreal to be drafted by the Ducks and be in the organization that I'm in.
Now that you've had that time to reflect and sit back, I mean, how hectic is that whole process? I mean, you're waiting around and you've talked to teams, like you said, you went to the combine. Like, how does that whole process work? Like, is it really crazy?
Yeah, it's not really a sense of nervousness. I think it's more of a sense of anxiousness because you're kind of sitting there just waiting. But in the end, if you're there and you get picked, everything ends up being pretty well, no matter where you go.
Yeah, and you bring, we know that you're a big guy. You bring a nasty side to the game. So, I mean, that's something that we're looking forward to here, right? I mean, that's something that everyone loves when they think about hockey. So that's something I know that us in Anaheim are excited about. But I know it's another cliche question. You've probably been asked it at least 100 times at the draft alone. But for Ducks fans who maybe haven't seen your game, I know I said it was a bit nasty, but what else do you bring to the organization here?
Yeah, I'm kind of a two-way defenseman. Play a complete 200-foot game, reliable on my end, and then also chip in some offense. But basically very tough to play against and kind of make sure guys on the other team don't want to play against me at the end of the night.
Yeah, I was just saying we heard at the draft with that it was your first time in Anaheim. You've been there on vacation before. Probably a little bit different feel to it this time though, going there for development camp, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think for sure a little bit of butterflies and nervousness going into the Great Park Ice there for the first time. So yeah, definitely a different feel.
What was your experience like at development camp, getting to meet all the other prospects, getting to meet a lot of the Ducks coaching staff, some of the current players, or what was your first experience there like?
Yeah, I think it was really good. I was there just trying to soak everything in and kind of learn from a lot of those older guys that are there, guys who played NHL games, and really see what it takes to be at that level.
And what did you think of the new facilities? You guys were among some of the first people to actually get out there and experience the whole aspect of the new Great Park facility. What was it like getting to experience that?
Yeah, it was awesome. I think they said we were the first ones to use it since it's only been there for a month, and those facilities were second to none. We had anything and everything that we wanted, and yeah, I think it's a great facility going into the future.
And Dallas Aikens was running he was running the practices for much of development camp. What did you get any interaction specifically with him, and what did you kind of get an idea of what his coaching style is going to be like?
Yeah, I didn't really have too much just specific one-on-one time with him, but he would come down and work with a defenseman when we'd split. But yeah, I really got a good vibe from Dallas, and I think his kind of coaching style, he's gonna rely on some younger guys at first and kind of build that younger group into a core that he can revolve around. So yeah, I have a really good feeling about it.
Well, we heard you're coming back to Cedar Rapids for the upcoming season. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
So take us through your thought process there, and why you think maybe it's a better decision for this upcoming season to go back to Cedar Rapids instead of jump right into the NCAA.
Yeah, I'm committed to University of Minnesota Duluth, and then this last year they only lost 1D, so I'd be in a limited role if I went in, and it's just a better decision to go back to Cedar Rapids where I could be a top pair defenseman and kind of be the first guy up on the back end there.
No, that makes a lot of sense, right? You want to be able to get your playing time in for sure. And we were reading that your coach Mark Carlson utilized you as a forward occasionally in the past. What was that transition like, moving from the blue line to up front? And you said you play a full 200-foot game, so take us through kind of like what's that like when you get switched from playing D to playing forward.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. For some reason, we had 9 defensemen that were active and 10 forwards. So when you have that many, you kind of had to move around a couple of guys. And I think that, I was kind of asked to do the job and help the team win. But it was also good because I have pretty good vision on the ice, and just also kind of the way I think the game might be a little more offensive minded. When I'm in that end, I can be creative and use my skills. But yeah, it was definitely a little weird at first couple of shifts, kind of being a little different, not playing forward since probably like Pee Wee or Squirt, and then going into a junior hockey game and being at a position you've never been at. But it was a good adjustment. You just kind of have to play within the system, and you're going to do fine. So yeah.
Did that make you feel any like maybe I want to play forward coming up here, or were you kind of like, nah, I'm ready to go back and play on the blue line a bit?
Yeah, no, not at all. I like being on the blue line and seeing everything that's in front of me.
All right, so you're set to go to back-to-back national champions UMD. What does that mean to grow up in the area and then get a chance to play for a team like UMD?
Yeah, well, I live just about 2 hours away from UMD, but I would go up there occasionally and watch games and have hockey tournaments up in Duluth. But I think obviously it's going to be a little bit of pressure right when you're there. Kind of the fans are going to be on your back, but they're also going to support you as well. And I think the coaching staff up there is great. Even Coach Samlin had an interview with the Ducks there when they were looking for their new coach. So, and it's also just a great. I think it's probably the best place in college hockey to play and develop. So, yeah, it's definitely it's very humbling as well.
Yeah, so that kind of flows into my next question too. I mean, it's such a great hockey state in itself, and I know this might be a little difficult to answer, but what do you think makes Minnesota such a powerhouse for developing hockey players? Right, they have such good programs all the time. A bunch of NHLers come out of there. What do you think it is about that area?
Yeah, I think it's it's the only place where you're going to play hockey with your buddies where you live in a 5 mile radius from the time that you're 5 until you're 18. And I think that the alumni that come out of there and have great success, they put a lot of their success right back into the program, whether they're coaching, funding, or really just being around the program and kind of just showing themselves around and showing the younger kids what it takes and just inspiring them. So I think just the community concept is what brings a lot of success to Minnesota hockey.
And the Ducks have been drafting a lot of kids out of Minnesota the last 2 drafts. Blake McLaughlin, Jack Perbix, Jackson Lacombe, Trevor Yannick, and now you. Did you play with or against these guys growing up, or do you know any of them very well?
Yeah, I actually, me, Perbix, and Janik, were all on the same Bantam Elite team, so it was kind of cool being out there with those guys. And I've known McLaughlin for a long time too, him and Perbix. They were on the same team together when they were younger, and we were in the same district, so I played against those guys a lot. I had some good battles, and then, I didn't play too much against Lacombe, but, yep, Perbix, Janicki, and McLaughlin I played against since as long as I can remember, probably 2nd or 3rd grade.
The last year we had McLaughlin and Perbix on the podcast, and one of our co-hosts who isn't on the show today, I wanted to ask them if they got a chance to go to In-N-Out while in Anaheim for development camp. It's such a Southern California or California restaurant. Did you get a chance to go to In-N-Out, and did Jack Perbix take you to Krispy Kreme? Because he was really high on Krispy Kreme last year.
No, we didn't even get a chance to go out to In-N-Out, unfortunately, but... No, and he didn't take me to Krispy Kreme either, but I probably have to get his case about that one.
He owes you some donuts and a burger, man, for sure. Yeah, no, win or lose, the Minnesota Wild are always routinely one of the top teams when it comes to attendance. They came into existence the same year you were born. But did you grow up a Wild fan? And what is it about that fan base that makes them so dedicated?
Yeah, funny story behind that, actually. The night that I was born, my dad was at a Wild game, but had to rush over to the hospital and leave the game. So, but yeah, I think really it's just the fans, the culture behind it, and kind of just the energy that they bring. I've been to a few games there when they're in the playoffs, even though they haven't been this last year, and it is wild. And I think compared to other cities, I don't think they're too hard on them, and they're always going to support them. So I think just the support from the fans is kind of what really drives them.
Well, we got one listener question that came in. We've got a lot of Canadians who listen to the shows, and Minnesotans are stereotypically known as Minnesota nice. So who is nicer, Canadians or Minnesotans?
100% Minnesotans. I have a cabin in northern Minnesota where some Canadians come down, and it's 100% the Minnesotans.
America's always got the best of you guys, Eddie. You can't win, dude.
I tried. I had to squeak one in at the end of the show. But, Will, thank you so much for coming on the show. We wish you the best of luck this season coming up in Cedar Rapids, and hopefully we see you in a Ducks uniform sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And there we go. Thanks for coming on the show there, Will Francis. It's always nice to have players that take the time out of, being super excited and figuring out what they're going to be doing with their summer as they get drafted by an NHL team. So we appreciate him coming out on the show. And thank you guys for listening. And if you made it to the other side of this podcast, we still have a couple of things to touch on before we wrap. Some San Diego news, guys. Kevin Dineen hired by the San Diego Gulls to take over the hole that was left by Dallas Eakins. How do you guys feel about that? I kind of like it. I think it's a good move for the Ducks.
Yeah, it seems to be someone that's another at least decent communicator. He talked with Eakins a little bit about what the whole idea is, and it's kind of like he wants to do in the AHL what those players are going to be expected to do in the NHL. So they want to try and play the similar style, where I felt like everyone succeeded under Eakins' style in the AHL, then they got moved up to Carlisle's system, and everything was just completely backwards on it, and then no one succeeded. So I think with them being a little bit more in sync, I'm fine with it. If anyone that wants to kind of be cohesive with the big club and how they do it and don't want to come in and just make it their own thing, I'm all on board for that.
Yeah, I think it's a good hire. I think he'll succeed Dallas Eakins in a pretty good way. I don't, he said he's going to come in and it's going to be a defensive system and he's going to rely on the players themselves to have some offensive creativity. It just will be interesting for me to see what kind of roster he's going to get because there's a lot of turnover in San Diego this year. We don't know who's going to be down there when you look at the Ducks' top prospects in Jones, Steele, Comtois, Terry, a little bit of turnover on defense, and then bringing in some different guys from, they brought in Polyuralski from the Charlotte Checkers, who were the Calder Cup champions. So there's going to be an interesting roster for him to work with down here, but I think he's got enough that he can still be successful.
No, for sure. And then the Ducks, just some minor signings. They signed Justin Kloos today, and probably going to be playing in the AHL, and Chris Weidman, a depth defenseman, will be playing also in the AHL. And then another player we lose to another team, right? Kalle Kassila off to Toronto to become a superstar with Austin Matthews. Clearly, that's what's going on there. But it's just weird. So many guys left the AHL after this season. Maybe it's because they got rid of Dallas Eakins and he went to the NHL, and so they're like, well, we don't want to play here anymore. Let's go somewhere else.
Not necessarily. I would think that
being sarcastic.
Though, sure. I'm thinking they finally did well in the AHL, made a deep run in the playoffs, and they're cashing in on what they can do. And obviously, if they're not going to make the big club and they got a chance in another organization that maybe needs a little bit more depth, then why not take that opportunity? So, and everyone wants to go to Toronto, you know that.
Very true. Well, let's cap the show here with a Patreon update. If you guys haven't already noticed, I got this pretty cool Forever Mighty snapback on.
That's so sweet.
If you join our Patreon and you would like to have extra content, if you already listen to us and you want more content and more ways to support the show and for us to be able to give back to you, you can go to our Patreon page. Which is, did we change the URL, Eddie, or is it still what it's always been? We did get rid of the Puck Guys off of it?
It's still what it's always been for now.
Okay, so it's patreon.com/Puck Guys Forever Mighty is where you want to go. That'll probably be updated here this summer for sure, because, Puck Guys is no longer around. Rest in peace.
Wah, wah, wah.
But shout out to new Patreon member who's joined our Cake Eaters Club, Chad Clevenger. Has decided to support us in a big way with our top tier, and with that tier, you get a hat. We're putting out lanyards, beer koozies, making stickers, doing stuff like that. a little bit of gear going back to people who support the show, and more than just extra content. But if you go to that page, there's just a bunch of goodies that come along with the bonus content to give back to you guys for supporting us, and that's just something that we love to do. We love doing the shows, and in the off season, we still pump out content for free. But if you want to go behind the paywall and check out what we got, we have a lot of fun bonus content for you guys to take a look at each month as well.
Yeah. And you can also connect with other fans that are not only Ducks fans, but fans of ourselves as well. And we have an open chat forum on Discord where you can, BS, take pictures, talk,
it's always
hang
fun.
out. Yeah, it's always it's a lively bunch, I'll say.
Yeah. Sometimes Gordon Bombay gets a bit out of hand and everyone mutes the chat.
And then all of a sudden everyone leaves for a day and then comes back. All right, I think he's gone.
I think he's busy now. You don't have to worry about him. But yeah, join the Cake Eaters Club if you want to get the maximum value out of our Patreon. And we'd love to give back. We do watch parties, by the way, if you're new to the show. Those are going to be coming up this year. They'll be in Orange County, obviously, mostly Anaheim, Yorba Linda area. So those will be happening at least 4. We did 4 last year. We're planning on doing 4 this year. And maybe if they squeak into the playoffs, we do a 5th one. We would like to do that.
Sure.
But yeah, if you guys want to support the show, just head over to patreon.com/Puck Guys Forever Mighty. And also just to touch on something here too is we're going to be full-time Twitch. I know we kind of announced that, but we're doing full-time Twitch for all post-game shows as much as we possibly can. So stay tuned for that as well. It's going to be a crazy season. I feel like it's going to be a big one for us. I had a buddy tell me yesterday, guys. I know we got to kind of jet, but real quick, he was explaining to somebody who I'd never met about how I do a post-game show with you guys and how we have had this show for a little over a year. And because I'm really bad at self-promoting. And the first thing he says is, "Isn't that hilarious? They do a post-game show, and their first full season when the Ducks have their worst year in 10 years."
Yep.
I was like,
Yeah,
This is one
yeah.
of the
Just listen to that
hardest
first
seasons
60
ever.
episodes of the same thing. I was just bitching.
Like, what do we
Got
do?
better the last 20.
Oh, what are we going to talk about? But somehow we eked out an hour show nearly every single game that we covered. So, do you guys got anything to add? We got anything else we're going to be pumping out here this summer you guys want to talk about, or are we good until next show?
Just stay tuned.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And we might have some more interviews coming out, so make sure you check out forevermuddy.com because we'll be posting them there first, and they'll be out on social media after as well.
Yeah, stay tuned to any and all news. Check our Twitter, especially, and then always go to the website forevermuddy.com, like Eddie just said. Thank you guys for tuning in. We love you guys, and we'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.